Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The first scream didn't come from panic. It came from entitlement. You're just a servant. Madeline Harrington's voice ricocheted across the marble ballroom, slicing through the conversation, the music, the elegance. Her red gown fanned behind her like a warning flare as she lunged forward, fingers stabbing the air toward a woman who hadn't said a single word. Amina Rhodes did not flinch. She stood in her navy blue dress, simple, sculpted, dignified, her back straight, her chin lifted just enough to show she wasn't intimidated, but not enough to show she cared. Her hand wrapped loosely around a glass of water, condensation trailing onto her skin like threads of ice. She blinked once. Slowly. Behind Madeline, her fiancé Ethan burst into laughter, sharp and theatrical, as though cruelty was a sport and he had just paid for front row seats. Look at her face, he barked to the surrounding guests. I swear, they keep letting anyone wander in. Phones rose like a fleet of tiny predators. Guests leaned closer. Someone whispered, "Record it, this is insane." Another chimed in, "She really thought she could mingle with us?" Amina remained still, too still. Like the eye of a storm that refused to move. The chandelier above them glittered, scattering white light over the polished floor, bouncing off the crystals on Madeline's earrings as she stepped even closer. Her breath hit Amina's cheek. Her voice turned venom-sweet. "Did you really think you belonged here tonight? In my family's mansion? In our world?" A gasp rippled from the far corner. Someone dropped a fork. But no one stepped in. No one spoke up. Not one person questioned why this woman in red, breath trembling with rage, thought humiliation was her inheritance. Amina's eyes shifted, just enough to take in the room. The gowns. The tuxedos. The smirks. The anticipation. She had walked into rooms like this before. Rooms that decided who belonged long before anyone opened their mouth. Rooms built on money, but maintained by arrogance. And yet tonight felt different. Sharper. Colder. Madeline jabbed her finger again, hard enough the movement rustled the fabric of Amina's sleeve. "Answer me, servant. Who even let you inside this house? Security must be asleep." Ethan snorted. "Check the service entrance next time." Laughter scattered through the guests, thin, nervous, eager to align themselves with the power they recognized. Madeline lifted her chin, satisfied with the reaction, feeding off it. But Amina's reaction was not what she expected. No tears. No apology. No shrinking into herself. Instead, Amina calmly placed her glass on the nearest tray. The faint click of crystal touching silver cut through the room louder than any insult hurled at her. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Amina. Madeline leaned in, voice dropping into something darker. "People like you should remember your place." Amina's gaze lifted, steady, unhurried, and devastatingly controlled. For the first time that night, Madeline hesitated. It was small. Barely noticeable. But the room felt it, the subtle shift in gravity, the way the air tightened, the way Ethan's laughter faltered mid-breath. Amina spoke at last. 2 words. Soft. Precise. A blade sheathed in velvet. Are you sure? Madeline blinked. What? Amina's eyes didn't move. Didn't soften. Didn't break. Are you sure, she repeated quietly, that you know who I am? A silence fell so deep it felt refrigerated. Even the chandeliers seemed to dim, as though the mansion itself understood what the guests did not, that something irreversible had just begun. And by the time this night ended, $5 billion would be dust. One call. One decision. One woman they should never have underestimated. Amina Rhodes. The storm they mistook for stillness. For a moment, no one breathed. Madeline's fingers still hovered in the air, trembling with the last echo of her rage. But something inside her wavered, just enough for the room to sense it. The lights above them shimmered against the marble, catching on the rim of every champagne glass as the silence deepened into something colder. Then Ethan laughed again. Too loud. Too forced. Oh please, he said, stepping around Madeline as if presenting Amina to the crowd. She's bluffing. Look at her. She's probably some house staff who wandered too far from the kitchen. A few guests chuckled, relieved someone had broken the tension. Pack behavior, predictable, cowardly. They leaned closer again, forming a loose ring around Amina, phones raised, ready to devour whatever happened next. Madeline seized her confidence back like a stolen accessory. Exactly, she snapped. This is my parents' gala. Our home. Our charity. And she thinks she can just stand here? In the main ballroom? Wearing, she gestured dismissively at Amina's gown. That? The guests murmured, nodding, eager to align with the heiress who had always taught them which side to stand on. Their faces glowed under the chandeliers, equal parts amusement and hunger. Amina didn't move. Her stillness made the room feel suddenly too bright, too exposed, like every cruelty was being spotlighted. Even the quartet at the far end slowed their playing, bows dragging uncertainly across strings as the atmosphere grew tight. Madeline stepped closer, red silk swaying around her legs like flames. Say something, she demanded. If you're not a servant, then what are you? Who brought you here? Ethan leaned in behind her, smirking. She probably snuck in through the side door. My God, imagine the audacity. The laughter this time didn't ripple. It cracked. Short, sharp, uncomfortable. People were beginning to notice the wrong things. Amina wasn't shrinking. She wasn't breaking. She wasn't even blinking as the insults hit her like dry rain. And that scared them more than they understood. A waiter carrying a tray of cocktails slowed as he passed, eyes flicking between the women. For a second, he considered stepping in. But the sight of Madeline's diamond bracelet, worth more than his entire annual salary, froze him in place. He lowered his gaze and kept moving. Predators on one side. Prey on the other. But the room didn't realize it had misidentified both. A woman in a silver dress whispered, "Why isn't she reacting?" Her partner replied, "Maybe she's in shock." No, the woman murmured, watching Amina's posture. She looks deliberate. Madeline heard it. It irritated her. Deliberate, she echoed sharply, turning back to Amina. Is that what this is? Some kind of stunt to ruin my night? Amina finally shifted, not away, not back, just a single step to the side, enough to alter the geometry of the space. Enough to make Madeline take an involuntary half-step backward. The room noticed that, too. Ethan scoffed. "What, you think you're intimidating someone? Lady, you should be grateful we even let you breathe in here." Amina's eyes lifted to his face. No anger. No fear. Just a slow, clinical assessment, like she was cataloging the end of something he didn't know had already begun. Somewhere behind the crowd, a guest whispered, "This feels wrong." And wrong it was, not because cruelty had erupted, but because cruelty was beginning to feel unsafe. The room, once amused, now shifted uneasily on its heels. People lowered their phones without meaning to. A few glanced toward the exits, as if instinct alone warned them they had aligned with the wrong side of history. But Madeline didn't feel it yet. She moved in again, voice sharp as broken glass. "You don't belong here," she hissed. "People like you never will." Amina lifted her chin. Just a breath. Just enough. The chandelier above them flickered, not from electricity, but from tension. The storm hadn't even started. But the mansion had already begun to feel its first tremor. Long before the night turned poisonous, long before a red-dressed heiress mistook arrogance for authority, Amina Rhodes had already walked through storms much colder than this ballroom. But no one in the mansion knew that. To them, she was just a woman in navy silk, quiet, composed, inconveniently unbothered by humiliation. To them, she looked like someone who should apologize just to keep the peace. To them, she was small. They had no idea how catastrophically wrong they were. Across the room, the chandelier's crystals trembled, scattering fractured light over marble floors that had outlived 6 generations of Harrington wealth. Somewhere behind the crowd, a portrait of the family patriarch stared down with the same entitlement that now clung to every corner of the house. But Amina wasn't looking at any of it. Her mind had already drifted backward, downward, to the roots of a life built on impossible climbs. She was 12 when she realized the world would not hand her anything. 21 when she learned how to take what was hers without raising her voice. 30 when she founded Rhodes Titan Holdings with a $30,000 loan everyone told her she'd never repay. Now, at 45, she controlled a constellation of industries spanning aerospace, renewable energy, microfinance, global logistics, and the infrastructure webbing beneath 3 major cities. $78 billion in consolidated valuation. 12 board seats. Authority that could shift global markets with a single email. But power was never the point. Dignity was. She learned it from her mother, who scrubbed other people's floors but refused to bow her head. From her grandfather, who said, "Wealth isn't the money you carry. It's the way you walk into a room." Tonight, she had walked into this room with intention. The Harringtons didn't know it, but this gala wasn't merely a charity event, it was the final checkpoint before a $5 billion retention and restructuring package that would rescue their collapsing empire. Amina had spent months reviewing their books, tracing the rot beneath their gilded facades, unpaid debts hidden behind shell companies, properties leveraged twice over, offshore accounts bleeding from internal mismanagement. The empire was dying. She had come to save it. And ironically, no one had ever seen her face. Harrison Harrington, the patriarch, conducted all negotiations through lawyers, assuming the mysterious investor behind Rhodes Titan was an older man, probably white, certainly deferential. Madeline had never bothered to read the investor memo. Ethan had dismissed it entirely. The staff had rehearsed the list of VIP guests, but no one questioned why one name didn't have a photo attached. Arrogance is lazy. And laziness is expensive. Amina had intended to introduce herself with grace, sign the documents after the dinner service, and quietly hand the family their one remaining lifeline. Instead, she had been treated like an intruder in a house she was about to salvage. A house whose mortgage, she now remembered, was held by one of her subsidiaries. How fitting. Around her, the ballroom continued its slow spiral of cruelty. Madeline perched like a spark waiting for kindling, Ethan circling with a hyena's grin, guests leaning closer with their polished curiosity. But behind Amina's stillness, something was shifting. A recalibration. A decision forming like frost. Her phone vibrated softly in her clutch, a reminder from legal that the final contracts were ready for signature, queued in her encrypted portal. Harrison thought the night would end with his empire reborn. But people who don't value dignity rarely deserve rescue. Amina lifted her gaze, letting it sweep the room, every glittering surface, every watching face, every person who had laughed. And somewhere deep in the foundation of the Harrington mansion, something invisible cracked. Not from sound. From consequence. The ballroom had regained its noise, but not its confidence. Laughter returned in fragments, too sharp, too thin, like glassware clinking off rhythm. Conversations resumed, but every word felt strained, as if spoken through a draft of cold air no one could locate. Yet the Harringtons didn't feel the shift. People like them rarely sensed danger until it touched their skin. Madeline, still flushed with adrenaline, smoothed her red gown and tossed her hair back. Honestly, she muttered loudly to the nearest group of guests, I can't believe we had to deal with that. Security needs to be fired. Ethan raised his drink. Soon as her little stunt is over, the night gets back on track. He grinned at the guests clinging to his side. Someone like her doesn't change anything. Someone like her. A familiar refrain. Amina stepped away from them, not out of retreat but out of intention. She moved toward the marble balustrade overlooking the lower hall, soft lighting painting her silhouette in contours of steel and calm. Her heels made no sound. The room's chaos simply parted around her as if unwilling to touch her again. She lifted her hand. A single drop of water from her glass, leftover condensation, clung to her fingertip before falling to the marble. The tap was barely audible. Yet somehow it felt like the first warning of thunder. Her clutch buzzed. Amina opened it with the same slow precision she used for negotiations worth nations. The display lit her face softly, Chief Legal Officer, final contracts ready. Awaiting authorization. The timing was perfect. Cruelly poetic. She brought the phone to her ear. Ms. Rhodes, her CLO said, voice crisp, respectful, unaware of the storm inside the ballroom, all restructuring documents for Harrington Global Holdings are live. We just need your approval to proceed to formal signing. Everything is set for midnight. Amina's gaze drifted back toward the crowd. Toward Madeline's laughing profile. Toward Ethan reenacting, mockingly, the way Amina had stood still during the confrontation. Guests giggled, clinking glasses beside him. She inhaled slowly. Put everything on hold, she said. A pause crackled on the line. On hold, ma'am? The Harringtons are expecting. I'm well aware of what they're expecting, she replied, voice soft, almost kind. Do not move a single dollar until I say so. The CLO didn't question her. He never did. Understood. She ended the call with a gentle tap. Across the room, someone noticed the shift first not in sound, but in posture. A guest beside the dessert table glanced up, brow creasing slightly. Who is she? The woman whispered. No one answered. Because no one knew. And the worst part. No one had cared enough to ask. Madeline finally noticed that Amina had stepped away. She scoffed, loud enough to reclaim attention. Oh look, she's calling someone. Maybe her manager? Or is she trying to sneak a refund for that dress? People laughed. Too eagerly. Ethan raised his voice. She's pretending she's important. It's cute. But the laughter sounded wrong this time. Close to nervous. Close to fragile. Amina returned her phone to her clutch and straightened the fabric of her dress. The simple gesture tightened something invisible across the room, an unspoken tension threading through the chandelier chains, the marble, the polished silver. Someone whispered, "Why do I feel weird about this?" Someone else replied, "Because she doesn't look embarrassed." Madeline heard none of it. Privilege is excellent at deafness. She stepped forward again, reclaiming the center of the room as if it were gifted to her by birthright. "All right," she declared, voice bright, performative, "let's forget that little interruption ever happened. Drinks on the house." But the energy didn't return. Not fully. Not the way she wanted it to. Because without knowing why, without understanding what their instincts were trying to warn them of, the guests felt something subtle. The balance of the night had shifted. Not loudly. Not violently. But unmistakably. A tremor beneath the marble. A ripple beneath the chandeliers. The early murmuring of consequences they could not yet see. And Amina Rhodes, silent, composed, unbothered, was the quiet center of a storm preparing to take its first breath. Harrison Harrington entered the ballroom like a man accustomed to being the final word in every room he walked into. Conversation shifted around him, a ripple of forced reverence. Guests straightened their backs. Staff stepped aside. Even the chandelier seemed to glow a little warmer in his presence. He had no idea he was stepping into his own funeral. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his baritone slicing through the half-hearted music. "I heard shouting." Madeline immediately rushed toward her father, pointing back at Amina with the confidence of someone who believed the world would always agree with her. "She caused a scene, Dad. She insulted me. She shouldn't even be here." Ethan cut in, dramatic and whiny. "She was pretending to be someone important. Total imposter." A few guests nodded, eager to align with the family's narrative. Harrison's jaw tightened. He hadn't even looked at Amina yet, as if hearing his daughter's version was enough to establish truth. "Security," he snapped, raising his hand toward the guards stationed by the entrance. "Remove her. Now." A hush fell, not silence, but anticipation. Everyone wanted to see how the woman in the navy dress would react when actual power pushed back. Amina didn't move. She simply turned, facing Harrison fully for the first time. Her posture straightened, not in fear, not in challenge, but in a quiet declaration that the time for patience had ended. The guards approached. 3 steps. 2. 1. Amina lifted her hand. Not high. Not dramatically. Just enough. "Stop." The guards froze. A reflex. A survival instinct. Something in her tone made obedience feel safer than action. Harrison bristled. "They're not here to take orders from you." "No," Amina said softly. "Not yet." A flicker of confusion crossed several faces. Something was wrong. Something no one could name. Amina reached into her clutch. Madeline scoffed. "Oh great, she's going to pull out a fake ID." But it wasn't an ID. It was a card. Black. Metal. Matte. Edges beveled in platinum. A card that didn't announce status. It confirmed it. Amina walked forward, each step anchored with the certainty of someone who never rushed in life because life always waited for her. She placed the card into Harrison's hand. A simple gesture. Quiet. Precise. Devastating. The ballroom held its breath. Harrison glanced down, irritated, then froze. His fingers tightened involuntarily around the metal. Color drained from his face as he read the name etched into the surface. Amina Rhodes. Founder and CEO. Rhodes Titan Holdings. Everything inside him collapsed at once. The laughter behind Madeline's lips died mid-breath. Ethan's smirk curdled into something hollow. The crowd leaned forward instinctively, sensing the shift, unable to stop themselves from witnessing the fall. Harrison's voice cracked, barely audible. Rhodes Titan. The investor. Amina didn't smile. She didn't savor it. She simply confirmed the truth. Yes. Shock rippled outward like a shockwave. Gasps. Dropped glasses. A hand over a mouth. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another murmured, "That's the woman funding the rescue package." Madeline stumbled backward. No. No. She can't be. She's lying. Amina's gaze swept across her. Am I? Her phone buzzed. Perfect timing. She answered it without breaking eye contact with Harrison. Ms. Rhodes, the voice said over speaker, crisp enough for the nearest guests to hear. We're ready for your approval to finalize the Harrington restructuring. Do you want us to proceed? The room froze again. Harrison's trembling. Madeline's horror. Ethan's whisper, "No way." Amina inhaled, slow and measured. Cancel everything. The words fell into the ballroom like a guillotine. Effective immediately, she added. A sharp crack sounded. Harrison dropping the metal card onto the marble. The empire was already collapsing. They just hadn't felt the full impact yet. But they would. Very soon. The crash of the metal card hitting marble hadn't even settled when the doors at the far end of the ballroom opened. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a soft click, the kind that precedes irreversible consequences. 12 individuals entered in perfect formation, dressed in dark tailored suits, movements synchronized with the calm efficiency of people who handled billions before breakfast. No logo on their jackets, no need for introduction. Their presence alone was a signature. Rhodes Titan Holdings had arrived. Conversations died mid-syllable. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Even the orchestra stopped playing, bowstrings hovering in the air like they were afraid to land on the wrong note. The lead attorney, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that read balance sheets like scripture, stepped forward, pulling a slim folder from her case. By directive of Ms. Amina Rhodes, she announced, voice ringing through the marble hall with courtroom precision, the following actions are now in effect. Madeline clutched her father's arm, trembling. Ethan stumbled backward as though distance could shelter him from what was coming. The attorney read aloud. 1. The $5 billion Harrington restructuring agreement is hereby nullified, effective immediately. A collective gasp erupted. Someone whispered, 5 billion, gone? 2. All credit facilities extended to Harrington Global Holdings through Rhodes Titan subsidiaries are revoked. A man near the bar muttered, that's half their liquidity. 3. All lines of credit currently supporting Harrington estates, properties, and operational branches are frozen pending legal review. Madeline's face drained white. Ethan stopped breathing. For all partnership negotiations, licensing agreements, and real estate ventures involving Harrington entities are terminated. The attorney closed the folder with a soft, merciless snap. Execution complete. Execution. The word was not metaphorical. Harrison tried to step forward, but his knees buckled. He caught himself on a marble column, voice cracking, Amina, please, we can discuss. Amina looked at him, not unkindly, but with the clarity of someone who had finally decided to stop sheltering a drowning man who refused to swim. There is nothing to discuss. Around them, panic erupted like a chain reaction. Guests scrambled for their phones. Traders texted frantically. Board members fled toward the exits. A senator in the corner muttered, this will topple them by morning. Madeline staggered toward Amina, shaking. You can't do this. You can't destroy us over some misunderstanding. Amina's voice remained unchanged. You destroyed yourselves. The attorney stepped beside her. Ms. Rhodes, should we prepare public disclosure? Amina gave one quiet nod. And with that, the Harrington empire, built over a century, began to crumble in real time. They had handed her the match. She had simply stopped pretending not to hold it. The Harrington Ballroom, once a cathedral of wealth, had become the quietest place in the city. For 5 full seconds, no one moved. No one breathed. No one dared to speak aloud the truth that every pair of widened eyes had already understood. An empire wasn't falling. It had fallen. And Amina Rhodes had done it with a single sentence. Then the chaos began. Phones exploded with alerts as if the stock market itself had chosen to march into the ballroom. Screens lit faces in panicked blue light. Harrington stock halted. Liquidity freeze, what does that even mean? Oh my God, is the restructuring really cancelled? One guest staggered backward, clutching his chest. Another sunk into a chair, whispering, I have shares, my portfolio, oh no. Across the room, a hedge fund manager dialed frantically, shouting into his phone. Sell everything. I don't care what price, sell it now. The orchestra packed silently, moving like mourners. Staff stepped aside, fearful, unsure which side of history they were standing on. Even the chandelier lights seemed to dim, as though refusing to illuminate the wreckage. Madeline Harrington stared at her reflection in a shattered wineglass. Her mascara streaked. Her breath shallow. Her world dissolving grain by grain. This can't be happening, she murmured. Daddy, tell her she can't do this. But Harrison was staring at his phone, trembling. He had finally opened the internal alert from his CFO. All Rhodes Titan funds withdrawn. Holdings seized. Credit frozen. We are collapsing. Madeline grabbed his arm. Fix it. I can't, he whispered. Without her, we're nothing. Ethan, who had mocked Amina the loudest, backed against a wall, shaking his head as if trying to wake up from a nightmare he wrote himself. This is insane. Someone stop her. Someone, anyone. But everyone knew. You cannot stop an avalanche after mocking the mountain. Across social media, the story detonated like wildfire. Hashtag Harrington humiliation. Hashtag Amina Rhodes. Hashtag respect black wealth. Hashtag billionaire down. Clips of Madeline screaming "You're just a servant" were already circulating, paired brutally with headlines. Heiress insults CEO who funded her family. The $5 billion consequence of arrogance. She had the wrong one. The ballroom filled with the quiet horror of people realizing they had been witnesses and accessories to the most expensive act of prejudice the city had ever seen. Some tried to delete the videos they took earlier. Too late. Millions were already watching. A woman in emerald green whispered, "We laughed, oh God, we laughed at her." Beside her, a man murmured, "We're ruined. Our partnerships were through Harrington. If they fall, we fall." The destruction wasn't contained to a single family. It rippled outward, claiming every ego that had stood too close. Yet in the center of the storm, Amina remained still. The only unmoving anchor in a room spiraling into panic. She watched, not with satisfaction, but with a calm understanding. People had to feel the collapse to understand the cost of cruelty. And by the time dawn came, not a single person in that ballroom would ever forget that the downfall began not with her power, but with their disrespect. While the Harrington mansion drowned in panic, Amina walked through the ballroom as if the chaos no longer applied to her. It didn't. Every step she took was steady, grounded, deliberate, the walk of someone who had spent a lifetime learning that power does not shout, it decides. Behind her, the financial wreckage continued to unfold, calls unanswered, accounts frozen, reputations collapsing faster than the champagne bubbles going flat on abandoned tables. But Amina wasn't watching any of that. She had already moved beyond destruction. Because the power of a black CEO in her position wasn't just the ability to take an empire apart. It was the ability to choose what to build instead. She stopped beneath the chandelier, its fractured light scattering across her navy gown. For the first time all night, the room quieted around her, not because she demanded it, but because panic finally yielded to awe. In that silence, she reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded document. Not a lawsuit. Not a termination notice. Something entirely different. Her lead attorney approached. "Ms. Rhodes, the media is requesting a formal statement." Amina shook her head gently. "Not about them. Not tonight." The attorney nodded and stepped back. A group of guests, those who hadn't insulted her but also hadn't protected her, watched with wide, remorseful eyes. They expected vengeance. Brutality. Retribution. They didn't expect grace sharpened into justice. Amina unfolded the document. It wasn't from the Harrington portfolio. It was from her own foundation. She spoke softly, but every syllable carried across the marble floor. Effective tonight, the $5 billion allocated for the Harrington rescue will be redirected. Gasps. Confusion. A flicker of hope from people still clinging to the idea she might show mercy. To the Rhodes Elevation Fund, she continued, which invests in communities denied opportunity. Scholarships, housing initiatives, minority-owned startups, youth leadership, medical access. Her gaze swept the room, and no one could hold it for long. "Money taken from arrogance," she said, "belongs in the hands of those who know its value." A few guests bowed their heads, not in reverence, but in shame. Even the staff paused, breath trembling in their chests as the weight of what she was saying settled over them. Madeline stumbled forward, mascara streaked, voice cracking. You're giving it away?" Amina didn't look at her. "I'm returning it," she replied. "Where it always should have gone." Madeline choked on the realization the single act of cruelty she committed cost her family an empire and built opportunity for thousands of people she would never meet. Justice didn't need to humiliate her further. It was already complete. Harrison's voice broke into a whisper. "Why? After everything we did?" Amina finally met his eyes, not with anger, but with the calm of a woman who had long outgrown vengeance. "You taught me something tonight," she said. "Arrogance destroys itself. I don't need to help it." Her attorney stepped beside her again. "Shall I notify the board?" Amina nodded once. The decision became real, transformational, irreversible. And with that, the Harrington mansion, once the pinnacle of inherited power, became the birthplace of a new, far more meaningful legacy. A legacy created not by the wealthy, but by the woman they tried to humiliate. By morning, the Harrington mansion no longer felt like a monument. It felt like a memory. The chandeliers still glittered, but their light no longer meant wealth, it meant aftermath. The marble floors still shone, but they carried the faint echo of a night that reshaped everyone who witnessed it. And the empire that once towered behind the Harrington name was gone. News helicopters circled the estate at sunrise, broadcasting headlines sweeping across every screen in the city. Harrington dynasty collapses overnight. $5B deal destroyed after heiress public humiliation of black CEO. The woman who broke the mansion. Pundits debated. Investors panicked. Activists celebrated. The world had found its new cautionary tale. But inside the mansion, the fallout was quieter. Madeline Harrington sat on the grand staircase, the same staircase she had once descended like royalty, now curled into herself, mascara smeared, hands trembling. The house staff passed her cautiously, unsure whether to offer comfort or distance. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Lost endorsements, severed charity appointments, sponsors demanding statements she couldn't craft. Every door she once assumed would always open now closed with startling speed. Her arrogance hadn't just cost her family their wealth. It had cost her the illusion that cruelty carried no price. Down the hall, Ethan Harrington watched stock tickers fall like dominoes. He tried calling every contact in his network. None answered. Influence built on inherited money evaporates the moment the money does. And Harrison, the patriarch who once commanded entire boardrooms with a gesture, stood alone in his private office, staring at legal notices strewn across the desk. Foreclosure. Asset seizure. Pending litigation. He looked smaller than the portraits of his ancestors behind him, as if the lineage itself were turning away. "Everything we built," he whispered. But even he knew the truth. They hadn't built anything. They had inherited it. And they had let arrogance hollow it out. Meanwhile, several miles away, in a glass-walled office high above the city, Amina Rhodes watched the morning light break over the skyline. Her assistant placed a stack of reports beside her. "Ms. Rhodes, the Elevation Fund response is overwhelming. Donations are pouring in. 3 universities want to partner. And the media is calling you, well, history-making." Amina didn't react with pride or victory. She simply nodded. "Good," she said. "Let's put the money where it matters most." She signed the first set of allocation approvals: housing for single mothers, scholarships for underserved youth, seed funding for minority entrepreneurs. Real rebuilding. Real future. Her pen moved with quiet purpose. Because justice, to Amina, had never been about punishment. It had been about correction. She stood, gazing out over the waking city, the same city that once doubted her, that once questioned her place, that once whispered she didn't belong. Now, it whispered something else. Respect. Her reflection in the glass did not look triumphant, it looked steady. Rooted. Certain. The world finally knew her name. But more importantly, it knew her standard. A soft knock came at the door. Her chief legal officer stepped in. "Everything okay, Ms. Rhodes?" Amina smiled faintly. "Everything," she said, "is exactly as it should be." And as the sun rose higher, gold warming the horizon, the quiet truth settled over the city like a verdict. Arrogance collapses loud. Dignity rises silent. And justice always knows where to find its way home.